Thank you very much for giving us this time to talk about the upcoming Australian population census. Why don't we begin this interview by you giving us an overview of the Australian Bureau of Statistics, ABS, the Australian census, the type of data you gather, etc.
Sure. The Australian Bureau of Statistics is Australia's national statistical agency. So we formed in 1905 under the Census and Statistics Act, and we've been an independent, trusted provider of national statistics for Australia for over 100 years. Our mission is to assist and encourage informed decision making in Australia, and we produce a huge amount of data. We produce the CPI, we produce unemployment rates, we produce national accounts, and a wealth of other things across Australia's economy, our environment and our population. The biggest thing we do, and we do it every 5 years, is the Census of Population and Housing, and we're preparing for one of those right now. Census Night is coming up on the 9th of August, and we're looking forward to, again, finding out who's in Australia and who calls Australia home and who's visiting Australia at that time. Now, this will mark 100 years of national census taking in Australia, so it's a very significant milestone for us this time around, and it's also a very significant period of change and growth in Australia's history. So we're excited to be taking the census again. The census goes a long way beyond just a population count. It also collects information on the housing and economic and social characteristics of Australian society. So it's an exciting project.
Can you please elaborate how the data you gather is used in policy making?
The census underpins democracy in Australia. So electoral boundaries are based on census data, as are a range of critical core infrastructure and decisions around infrastructure that occur in Australia. So things like health, education, emergency services, transport, all of these things, and the government departments and the community groups and people who make decisions around those services are doing so often using census data. Another way that census data is used in policy making is actually through benchmarking, so having something that they can measure the success of policies and programs from a benchmark, and we do a census every 5 years and we can see the change over time. A very significant way that the census data is used is in the allocation of funding for a whole range of things across Australia, and the most significant example of that is actually $45 billion in GST funds are allocated to the states and territories using census data and population information from the census.
Is the data gathered shared with other agencies, both within Australia and outside Australia?
All of the data that the ABS collects is available on our website and free of charge. We put it up there and the public and other agencies can come and access that data through a range of online products that we provide.
So it's accessible for people even outside Australia?
That's correct, yes. People within Australia and people outside of Australia can come to the ABS website and look for the data that's available from the census.
Thank you, Mark. So, at what level is this information shared with other agencies? Is it at an individual household level or at a cumulative, aggregated level?
All ABS data that we publish, individual people or households can never be identified. We're legally bound to never release personal information in any way. So data that we publish, publicly made data from the census and data that goes to any other government agency or anyone overseas or in Australia, that data, it's absolutely guaranteed that no individual person or household can be identified in that data. We obviously do publish data at a community level, and that's why it's so important that everybody in the community is involved and takes part. And on the 29th of July, from there, census collectors will be coming around and knocking on doors, handing out census forms to people, and then they'll come back and collect those forms that have been filled out. So it's very important that everyone takes part. It's a fairly simple process, and we very much hope that everyone from each community gets involved.
Thank you, Mark. I'm glad that you alluded to privacy protection, because our next question is in relation to that. How do you protect the privacy of the information you gather? What kind of safeguards are in place to ensure that an individual will not be affected by identity theft or targeted by unsolicited marketing agency?
The primary way that we protect everybody's information is just through the fact that legally we are not allowed to release that information to any other third party, and that obviously includes marketing agencies as well as other government departments and everybody else. We must not and cannot release that information to anybody outside the ABS, and we will not do so. So we've been doing the census for 100 years in Australia. We take that privacy very seriously, and we well understand that if it wasn't for the fact that people could trust the ABS with their personal information, that things like the census just wouldn't work, where we're asking people to provide that information for this community level and larger level release that decisions can be made from. So yes, we take that privacy very seriously. We will not release that information, and in fact, after we've processed those forms, the census forms that come to us, we then destroy those forms, including all the name and address information, so they're gone and no longer exist.
Thank you for confirming that, because that's a sort of a concern a few people have. We know that Special Broadcasting Services, SBS, uses the data you publish to allocate airtime on for various communities. Who else get the community-related information from Australian Bureau of Statistics?
Well, as I said, all our data is available free on our website, and people can access that at certain levels. Now, none of that data is personally identifiable, but you can get it at that community level. It's used by a whole range of people for a whole range of purposes, and that goes from every level of government, businesses large and small. There's education, like students and teachers, researchers, librarians, not-for-profit organisations, community groups, and members of the Australian public just interested in their area or the people in their area. And what kind of communities live around the place and that sort of thing. So it's available, people can get in and have a look. Community organisations and councils and others do use our data for community-related services. Now, we have new and emerging migrant groups and settlers in Australia, and they have sometimes language needs and other things, and the media obviously use it for that allocation of airtime, but also things like language schools and a range of other services that are really important to provide for those emerging groups. And the census captures that information and provides a basis for making good decisions about how to use those services and where to target those services for Australian communities.
You talked about communities, Mark. How do you identify communities in Australia?
The census asks for some very basic demographic information, age and sex and those sorts of things. It also goes beyond that to ask some richer information about who we are and the people who call Australia home and the people who come and visit Australia. That information is largely obtained through 4 of our questions: the ancestry question, a country of birth question, language spoken at home, and a question on religion. And through those 4 questions, we're able to get a very good understanding of the people who have come to either be in Australia through visitors, international students and other things, or through people who have moved to Australia and now call Australia home.
Related to that, you talked about language spoken at home. Talking to a few people, some feel that if they say that they speak Tamil at home, if they speak a language other than English, they will be looked down by other people. Is that fear unfounded? Is that true? What would you say?
There's no right or wrong answer to the census. The best answer is simply the truth. So nobody is going to be looking at anybody's census answer and making any judgments about what they've put whatsoever. And as I've said, nobody outside of the ABS will ever see that person's individual response. And within the ABS, we're not looking for a certain answer and we're not making judgments on people's answers. We're just processing that to get the right information about each community and each area that people need to make those decisions. So it's absolutely vital that people really record their census form honestly for their own situation and the situation in their household, and that everybody in that area fills out the census form honestly with the right situation for their household, because otherwise the kinds of services that each community need may be reduced if there isn't understood to be the need there that these people actually would like if they were to put down what they honestly spoke at home, for example. So
you would encourage Tamils who speak Tamil at home to respond by saying Tamil is a language they speak other than English at home?
Absolutely. If the language spoken at home question is asking somebody who does speak Tamil at home, then that would be the answer to put on the form, just filling out the census form as honestly as possible for your given situation.
Right.
At the last census, Many Tamils who stated Sri Lankan as their ancestry have been classified as Sinhalese, even though they speak Tamil and are Tamil by heritage. How can we avoid such a thing from happening at this census?
We've had a review of our ancestry classification and we've resolved this issue. Now, in the ancestry question, you record your own ancestry or you're talking about your parents' ancestry. If your parents were or are Tamil, if you want to report that you are Tamil, but not where you're from, then the answer would be Tamil, and as part of your ancestry, and that will be coded correctly for your situation.
So what are the codes you have? You have Tamil as a code?
Tamil on its own will be recorded as Tamil, not elsewhere classified, so no further description about where that person who has Tamil ancestry is from.